Okay, so last class we talked about early Christian. Today we're moving into Byzantine. Oop. So, moving on over to Constantinople, which becomes modern day Istanbul. We're now focusing on the early Byzantine period, which runs from 324 to 726 CE. This is the period of Constantine, who we've talked about last lecture, or we just mentioned him. So we'll be moving on past Constantine onto Justinian and what's considered as the golden age of Justinian, when the Byzantine Empire reaches a very large extent until the period of iconoclasm, um, where there will be a period of religious images being systematically destroyed. So we'll focus on that a little later on. Um, so early Byzantine period, like I said, 324 to 726 CE, period of Constantine, Justinian until the beginning of iconoclasm. Here we have a map of Constantinople. There's Constantine. There he's depicted in, or that's actually Justinian, not Constantine, or Constant, yes, Constantine. And then there's Justinian. And then we have images of iconoclasm. So uh, images of early Christian art or Christ are being destroyed. Um, just a reminder of Constantine, which we see here on the left. He moves the imperial capital east. So moving from the Roman Empire, we're moving towards Constantinople, which had been Byzantium. He names it Constantinople after himself. Today it is known as Istanbul. Istanbul's in modern day Turkey. So this big move happened in 330 CE. Just a few things to keep in mind as we move into the Byzantine Empire. So first off, the inhabitants of the Byzantine Empire referred to themselves as Romans. They did not consider themselves as continuing the Roman Empire. So outsiders referred to them as Greeks. So they're inhabiting that eastern portion of the Mediterranean. So outsiders referred to them as Greeks, but they themselves viewed themselves as Roman. Early on, their official language was Latin, which was the language of the Roman Empire, but later it will become Greek, and we start to see more and more Greek being used for documents and manuscripts and things like that. So, if you recall from last class, um, that illustrated manuscript of Christ in front of Pilate, how it was written in Greek text or scribed in Greek, there's the reason why. That was their language at the time. Jumping ahead a little bit, in the golden age of Justinian, he ruled from 527 to 565 CE. So we've moved quite a bit forward in time. He did not expand the empire, or he did expand the empire quite a bit going west, and this is, of course, very expensive. It costs a lot of money, so he's trying to take over areas that have been taken by groups like the Vandals or the Ostrogoths and other groups. He tries to retake land that had been previously part of the Roman Empire. He did have a historian named Procopius. Words are hard. Procopius. There were secret histories and official histories, and one of the most intriguing parts of these histories is about his wife, Theodora. So just going over the bullet points written here on the slide. He ruled from 527 CE to 565. Capital city during his reign was still Constantinople. Justinian's historian Pro here we go again. Procopius reported that his wife Theodora was an actress and an escort. She had a shady past before she married Justinian. And a couple things about Justinian. He created a program of impressive public works. So, art to him was symbolic of wealth, power, and importance. Moving on to his wife Theodora, she becomes an important figure in his rule. It was known that she had a shady past. She was an escort and an actress before she married Justinian, but then he became enchanted by her. Justinian created works with her. She was like his muse. So a lot of the time she was depicted in public works, murals, things like that. Um, there needed to be a special law passed for them to marry because of her shady past. She was a great advisor to Justinian. She was very important. She passed many laws and passed many laws against human trafficking. So, architecture. Um, an important piece of architecture during the Byzantine period or empire is the Hagia Sophia. There is a video linked in the notes section, kind of talking more in depth about this architectural marvel. But one of the most important architectural pieces or structures during the Byzantine Empire is the Hagia Sophia, or the Church of Holy Wisdom. Today, it has been greatly modified from the time of Justinian through the addition of minarets when it became a mosque. So, what a minaret is are these symbols of, in the current day, mosque. So it became a mosque after the Ottoman Turks inhabited Constantinople and renamed itself Istanbul. Also, the dome is not the original dome. The original dome was created by two architects employed by Justinian. They were named Anthemius and Isidorus. These individuals were scholars. They had never built anything of this size before, and just giving you an example of how huge the structure is. Um, but in fact, it was built in 5 years, which is really incredible if you think about it, the speed in which something this size was built. Reading these bullet points, the Hagia Sophia is an enormous architectural marvel in Istanbul, Turkey, that was originally built as a Christian basilica nearly 1,500 years ago in an effort to create a grand basilica that represented all of the Byzantine Empire. Emperor Justinian decreed that all provinces under his rule send architectural pieces for use in its construction. So he acquired lots of materials from people under his reign. This central dome rests on a ring of windows and is supported by two semidomes and two arched openings to create a large nave. Remember, a nave is the large open area in one of these structures, um, usually a common place for congregating large amount of people. Um, the walls of which were originally lined with intricate Byzantine mosaics made from gold, silver, glass, terracotta, and colorful stones, and portraying well known scenes and figures from the Christian Gospels. So, as mentioned before, the dome is supported through pendatives, which we see here. Basically, they're curved triangles um, that move between the square base and the curved dome. At first, the dome was quite flat, more of something we call a platter dome rather than a bowl type dome. And it actually, in the Hagia Sophia, it did collapse. The church began to buckle, and later on, they had another architect and one of the nephews of the original architects. He would later come in and create a dome with a higher pitch, which would push the weight of the dome down to the group rather than having so much weight pushing down in the center. So these pendatives gave way for the dome um, to be able to rest on the pendatives and not fall in on itself. So this is a system whereby a dome rests on top of another dome. The weight can be transferred into the lower dome and built on a large scale. Essentially, it works the same as buttressing. So, if we recall, a buttress is just a support. The guiding principle of Greco-Roman architecture had been to express a balance of opposing forces, like the balance of contrapposto of a classical statue. The result was a muscular display of active and passive architectural parts. So, in each chapter, we kind of see this evolution of thought of how to support these mega structures, and we just see an evolution happening. We have buttressing, we had groin vaults, and now we had ribs too, and we're still going to talk about ceiling ribs, especially when we get to Gothic and we talk about cathedrals. But these are just um, steps being made to perfect um, structures. So here we see another view of how these would aid domes, and then here we see again the black sections would be these supports. Okay, now we're moving into Ravenna, which is the western capital of the empire, and Justinian was successful in retaking this land from the Ostrogoths in 539. Here we will focus on the Church of San Vitale. Um, so the location, we're moving from Istanbul to Italy again. Um, it was named by the Etruscans, but no one really knows why. Later, um, accepted into the Roman Republic as a federated town in 89 BC. In 49 BC, it was the location where Julius Caesar gathered his forces for a battle. Today, Ravenna is known for one reason, the churches, and San Vitale is the church to visit. Ravenna was a light in Europe's dark ages. 200 years later, the Lombards booted the Byzantines out, and Ravenna melted into the backwaters of medieval Italy, staying out of historical sight for 1,000 years. And this is how it looks like. Um, if we focus in on the Church of San Vitale, this church was dedicated by a bishop in 547. It has extensive mosaics, just like the Hagia Sophia. Gold mosaics up at the top and marble down at the bottom, kind of separating that celestial and terrestrial, or land and sky. Um, we see these supports here. Those are buttresses, by the way. So Here we see one of those mosaics. We see Christ in the center, beardless, wearing a purple garment and purple. So once again, going back to symbolism and color, purple in these times suggested royalty, authority. We see the image of the original bishop, Ecclesias, who was the bishop this um, when it was first founded, a little model of the church. And then we have the figure of San Vitale, or the individual who was martyred and for whom this church was named. Reading the bullet points, San Vitale has an ambulatory. It's larger than the Santa Costanza. There's a clerestory, or the beginnings of one. It has galleries, so a second level, lavish decorations, large windows, new vaulting ideas, different a different church. Indeed, it is unlike others in its use of light and design. The interior is unbelievable. Central plan churches were based on martyrs. Looking at the mosaics, here we see Justinian. So, looking at the roughness of the stone allows for the light to diffuse off the colored glass. This is called tesserae. Here we have another well-known mosaic from San Vitale. This is one, and it tells the story of Justinian bringing church and state together. So off the right, or the superior side of Christ, is Justinian. And Justinian is here with what we call a nimbus, or it looks like a halo. It suggests authority, power, and importance. He looks very Christ-like right here in the center. He has many followers, similar to the followers of Christ around him, so kind of like his own apostles. He has what looks like warriors, men who are soldiers, right here. But he's holding a chairo, and that was an important symbol for Constantine. Also, the first letter of Christ's name in Greek. Justinian clearly stands out here with his purple robe. He's holding a vessel known as a paten, which was used to carry the bread in that would be later used for the ceremony. And then we see the bishop, who is, of course, the bishop of the church when the church was finished. Justinian probably never came to this church, but he is here symbolically, just a reminder of his power. And then on the opposite wall, we have Theodora and her attendants, and we see her carrying the chalice or the cup. So she's going to participate in the ceremony as well. This figure right here is kind of signaling or telling her now it's time to come in, and they're pushing away the curtain. She is similarly dressed in fine garments, easy to spot her out. Okay, we have iconoclasm, or the Second Golden Age. During iconoclasm, there were people known as iconoclasts, or image destroyers, in 1726. And then, on the contrary, we have image lovers, so iconophiles, in 843. Iconoclasm was led by the monks. Since the image of Christ is inseparable, the honor is transferred to symbolism of Christ. The ban was lifted in 843 because problems arose. For a while, the Pope was not recognized as the supreme head. So, this goes back to the second commandment. You shall not make for yourself any given graven image or likeness of what is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them. So, what happened to cause such a thing? Catastrophic years for the Eastern Empire. Territories were lost, wealth, population, along with material resources. Emperor Leo III said that God had punished the Christian Roman people for its icon worship. In 726, there was the prohibition of the use of icons. The only image allowed was the cross as a symbol, or the throne of heaven. Animals, architectural motifs, and floral were placed inside the homes and churches. Many of the works of art were destroyed. So once people were able to create art and images of religious themes, the push was on again. Um, Christ. So we have this image here, Christ as the ruler who passes judgment. This is a common theme since people needed to fear God and see him as the one true ruler. Going back to early Christian art, we talked about how Christ is depicted as young and youthful. Here we see a different Christ, one that should be feared. So Christ as judge of all humankind. Another classic piece showing Christ on the cross is a Christ on the cross with Mary and John on either side, the skull at the bottom. This has all the features for the future artist. So we have symmetry, symbols, and this shows Jesus with Mary and John pointing as if to say, "Behold the Savior." Its timeless presence, which beheld the broken silence that was the deepest mystery of Christian religion. Note the height of the cross. Then we have David composing the Psalms. Here we see some of the pre-Christian images translated into a biblical scene. We can see a town and allegory figures such as Orpheus, Melody, Echo, even a Greek figure that would represent the mountains of Bethlehem. So that's it for Byzantine. Test or the quiz for chapter 8 will be unlocked noon on Tuesday and will lock back up on Wednesday. So disregard what this slide says. This hasn't been edited. So again, extra credit on Monday. That will be due on Thursday. Quiz for chapter 8 Tuesday, locks back up Wednesday midnight, and then Thursday we'll hit up Romanesque and then end with Gothic. Okay, that's it.